Good morning, everybody. My name's Greg Younghans. Appreciate you all coming this morning. I think we've got a great turnout, and I think John's got a great session for us planned today. As he mentioned, if you have your cell phone, if you can just turn that on silent or vibrate during the session for us. Also, I think everybody may be familiar with the WERC app. That's where we're doing all the session evaluations. So if you just go into the agenda section on there, then you can click on this particular session and insert your evaluation after we hear John's speech today. So let me just say a few words about John and introduce him, and then I'll get it turned over and he'll deliver his message to us. So John has developed and implemented strategies for more than 100 companies, and he delivers to corporate leaders innovative labor solutions that incorporate solutions to employees' needs. His work has spanned a wide range of industries, including distribution, food and beverage, automotive, chemical, electronics, pharmaceuticals, power, call centers, banking, insurance, telecommunications, mining, government, and healthcare. It may have been easier to list what he hasn't done, but
my mother wrote this, by the way, so yeah. It's mostly true.
Yeah. So his philosophy is that people are the most valuable resource of every company, and his experience has proven that in order to create long-term success, a thoughtful and methodical approach to labor must be created. Before joining Ankara, John was a founding partner of Core Practices, LLC. So he's with us today. It sounds like he's on a 3-city tour this week, with this being the first one, and off and running after this to a couple other places. So we're glad to have him here and look forward to his message. John?
Thanks very much. Thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah, so thank you all for coming, and you get the fresh version of me because I have 3 speeches in 3 cities in 4 days. So it's going to be an interesting week for me, and this is not normal for me, but you will get a rambling sermon today, and I want to talk to you about analytics, but I really want to talk to you about it in terms of employee engagement and why it matters. And so there's some cautionary tales that I'm going to walk you through today, including some stories about negative engagement. I'll try and make this entertaining for all of you. Because it's being recorded, I do want you to see that my name is John Fraze, but I also have to give credit to the guy that helped me put this together. I don't want to give him equal credit because he's not here. But Greg Gordon is the vice president of analytics at Kronos, really smart guy. He's going to watch this tape, and he said, you better mention my name. I wanted the font to be smaller, but I couldn't do it in PowerPoint. Warning, this is not a technology story. This is about how we were finally forced to adopt analytics whether we like it or not. So I'm going to show you some analytics. We're going to talk about that. But the reality is, this is about the fact that you do not anymore have the ability to hire and retain great employees. It's not easy. How many people here have a hard time hiring and retaining great employees? Okay. It's a challenge. And so we're going to talk about a lot of that and how it relates back to analytics. How am I even allowed back at this event? I am one of the highest rated speakers at work, which is great, but it's usually because I tell very inappropriate stories. I've talked about Google being the enemy and how they are your biggest enemy, and I'll share that story again. I think, Brandon, you've heard this now 10 times. But also about people stealing shampoo. How does that relate to distribution? We actually figured out why people steal shampoo from hotels at Pebble Beach, and we figured out if we made the shampoo larger, they couldn't steal it, because they'd have to check their bag because of the 3-ounce regulation with TSA. And I talked about how analytics solved that problem, and people said, this guy's crazy. And so I told it about 1,000 times. So what's the purpose of analytics? Anybody? They're having more fun next door, by the way, but don't leave. Insight, right? So analytics is really about one thing. You provide access to information in a useful format, right? Insight, exactly. This is the entire business model for Google. And I told this story 2 years ago. I'm going to tell it again, but I think this is really important for all of you to understand. I was giving a speech at Pebble Beach with the co-head of Google at WERC. Her name's Shayla Ali. She's an incredibly inspiring speaker, lovely woman. I thought I was the keynote, and I showed up that morning. And they said, John, you're actually not the keynote for this event. You're the co-keynote. And Shayla Ali is going to go first. And I said, there's no such thing as a co-keynote. What are you talking about? What I was really saying is I'm incredibly nervous that this brilliant woman is going to give an amazing speech, and then I have to go after her. By the way, in November, I followed a famous Hollywood actress in London in a speech, and it also was incredibly painful for me, Jane Fonda. So she talked about seniors and sex, and then I talked about millennials. I was like, hey, y'all, whatever. True story. It's actually on video. I went after her, and what happened is she gave this amazing speech, and she got a standing ovation. And I got up right after her, and I said, you should all be ashamed of yourselves. You gave her a standing ovation. I said, did you hear anything that she said? Their mission statement is to provide access to information in a useful format. That's what Google does. So going back to this slide, right? Whether it's YouTube, access to information in a useful format with video, Google Search, Gmail, they're doing one thing with a lot of different products, okay? That's all they do. Access to information in a useful format. I told them, I said, this is terrible for all of you. I had 100 CEOs in the room, including people from places like FedEx. Okay, and I said to them, this is terrible for all of you. Why do you think it's terrible? I said, do you really want your employees to have this information? And then they thought, okay, this guy's like the worst person we've ever heard. He's an evil man. I said, let's take a quiz. And for those of you that have heard me talk about this, you're not allowed to answer. I said, what do you think the starting salary of a software engineer is at Google? This amazing woman, Shayla Ali, gave a speech. You guys loved it, standing ovation. She's destroying all of you. A 21-year-old coming out of college to become what they call a software engineer and test at Google, what do you think they make? No job experience. Anyone? 150. Anyone else? We're going to do like more of this later. So I have 2 hours, right? Thank you. It's $113,128. And I said to them, what do you pay your employees? And a person who will remain nameless from a large supply chain organization I may have mentioned earlier said, we pay $13.50 an hour, but our benefits are really good. And everybody laughed, and then I felt really badly about it. And I said, okay, the point is, you guys can't pay $113,128 to your employees, but there's a lot of currencies you can pay them with. The question is, are you paying them those currencies? And so I asked the question, and then I said, how do you folks think I know the Google salaries? I Googled it, right? I Googled it. They were giving her a standing ovation, and I was like, I'm going to die. And I was on my phone, what is the salary of somebody at Google? How do I counteract this amazing thing? Not to be mean to her, but to say, hey, you guys are all in trouble. You didn't get the point. You guys heard about the chocolate in the break room and the free lunches, and you didn't hear that they're totally taking all of you down. Access to information in a useful format. That's the theme of my speech today for all of you. And that's what I want to ask you to ask yourselves. Are you providing access to information in a useful format to your employees? You say, well, they get pick rates and things like that. That's not what I'm talking about, okay? Do we value them? Do we treat them like they're real human beings? Or do we say, you know, we pay for the hands, we get the head for free, you know, it's not a big deal. That's the wrong attitude. So I want to take you through, again, a rambling sermon on this discussion. So millennials can get answers to almost anything, right? How many ounces in a gallon, whatever. The key one at the bottom for all of you is, does what happened in Charlotte really stay in Charlotte? And the answer is no. This is not Las Vegas, okay? So be very careful during your stay. But the point is, they get access to anything they want through Google search. And then they come to the work, right? And they have access to almost no information in a useful format. So to give you an idea of the kind of employee that you're hiring today, they're used to all this access to information. And this is from an airline, and an airline where we do customer service work with them. And they sent me this screenshot, and they said, you're not going to believe this one. And these days, we believe everything. But is there anything else you'd like to tell us about your in-flight entertainment experience? Like the screen was okay, or the sound wasn't right, or whatever. This person said, the entertainment system cut out, and I could not finish my movie. Can someone please tell me how Mad Max ends? I'm dying over here. Really? That wasn't really the point of the question, but they assume they can get immediate information online, right? And so this is how they interact, okay? So are you up to the challenge of bringing all these people in, right, and giving them the same level of service they expect when they're outside of work? They get it on their smartphone. So can your team get answers to these questions? Who's my best supervisor? Who are my best employees? You know, things like negative labor variances. We look at that sometimes on a surface level, but When we look at productivity, do we have too many people or less people, and when are we the most productive, and is it volume-based? The more volume we give them, the better they do up to a certain point, and then they break. So what is the right amount of volume we should be serving to our employees, right? Are they better on Fridays than Mondays? Because on Fridays, they work really, really hard to get the job done. Until they realize they can't get it done, then they slow down, because then they can come in for a full shift on Saturday. Because we're going to bring them in for 2 hours on Saturday, but they want to get a whole shift of overtime if you're going to ruin the day for them. FMLA trends. FMLA is a growing problem for all of you, okay? We have clients where new employees come in and they say, I'd love to sign up for vacation, I need my FMLA paperwork. It's just how they interact now, okay? So you say anything about FMLA and you're in court immediately, right? You have to be very careful, but you can measure the trend, you can understand when it's happening and why it's happening, and you should be doing it. We believe employees are every organization's most valuable resource. This is what we say all the time. It's on our website at Ankara. And we believe that everybody says that. We don't believe everybody believes that. Okay? So when I show this slide, people say, hey, man, your projector's broken. I go, no. Your projector's broken. And I'm like, maybe I shouldn't yell at the audience. But the point is, this is what employees are looking at a lot. Okay? Nothing. Okay? What can we give them that is useful to them so they can be more effective? That's the question. And we say, well, we don't want to give them too much stuff. I feel like we're lowering the bar and letting them win. Letting your employees win is not about lowering the bar. That is an embarrassment. That is a terrible thing to do to your employees. It tells them they're not smart enough to get the job done. The letting them win I'm talking about is all about analytics. If we can give them access to information in a useful format, they can make better decisions faster. That's the whole story. Okay, so letting them win is not, well, we've got millennials, they've been coddled their whole lives. That's the wrong story. It's intellectually lazy. Millennials are not all that way. We need to give them the ability to win without lowering the bar. And what millennials tell us is Excel is for old people, which is kind of harsh. But they don't use Excel the way that I use Excel. They laugh at stuff like this. Right? All these massive equations in Excel. They use things like Tableau and MicroStrategy and other analytics tools that have prettier pictures, they're more dynamic, and that can give them access to information in a useful format. So I want to share one example. This is a little bit of an old example, but it's one that we found pretty interesting. If this story is really about analytics and engagement, I want to give you the story of where we actually did that with our employees. So we took client data, and we got it, because one of the hardest things to do is get it in a clean enough format where you can do something with it, right? So we got it in a clean format, and we gave 3 20-something-year-olds, 23, 25, and 26-year-olds, all the same information, and we said, who can come up with over $1 million in cost savings the fastest? And we actually made it a game. And one of the employees found $1.1 million in cost savings in 3 minutes. This is exciting stuff. They're capturing cost savings for the company, or identifying in this example. We captured about 900,000 of that. But it was for a client of ours, and what they said is, they went right into workforce to workload, which is this middle section, and they said, look at these peaks on Fridays. They're overstaffed on Fridays every single week. What's going on? So through analytics, they were able to see that right off the bat. The guy, his name's Rob Henley, on video. Rob, we didn't forget you. He actually picked up the phone and called the ops manager at this client and said, hey, you guys are overstaffing on Fridays, what's going on? And the guy said, I've been in this business for 30 years. We know that more people call off on Fridays than any other day, and so we overstaff as an insurance policy. And then Rob hung up on him. It's like it was like 30 seconds, the guy was probably still talking, but Rob again wanted to win the game, and so it wasn't about the client somehow. But what happened is, he hung up, and then he went and he looked at absenteeism. And he said, you know what? Time off on Friday is on par or lower than the other days. The plant is not experiencing the typical bathtub curve, the Monday-Friday story, that is typical. So we actually looked at the data, and this whole story that everybody calls off more on Friday isn't true here. And so and then he did the math, and he said, I've got $1.25 million in cost savings. And he won. And we actually gave him 2 first-class tickets anywhere he wanted to go in the world. And why did we do that? We have a client that was paying us a lot of money to make sure they captured cost savings. We made it fun, but we didn't lower the bar, right? We just gave them the ability to do the things that they've been educated. By the way, millennials, 20% higher education than any other generation before them. If you think these people are not super intelligent, you're crazy, okay? It's a very smart group of people. We need to engage them differently. So, anybody know what this is? Starting to sweat a little bit? So the good news is you don't have to know what this is, but this is kind of the future. It's an example of machine learning. It's K means clustering. So this looks at trends and basically clusters of behavior in analytics. And this is the kind of stuff that can change the way you run your business. It measures the trends and it identifies the trends. But analytics does this for you. You don't have to understand the math, okay? It's already there. And so when we say analytics is finally ready for prime time, analytics has been ready for prime time for years now. We haven't been ready for analytics. Okay, that's been the problem. We haven't been ready to adopt this stuff. Crazy math, this is the stuff that everybody's talking about now, but almost no one knows the math. It's okay, you don't have to know the math. You just have to have the right tools. It'll do it for you. So I want to talk to you about negative engagement. A lot of speakers will tell you about positive engagement. Here's how we improved employee engagement in our company. Nobody really believes that stuff is the problem, because we've all invested in engagement. Not a lot of people do. And the results have been questionable. We don't know how much we got back for that employee engagement exercise we did. We can't measure it. So one of our corporate clients hired me to come in and speak to the executive team at this company, very large company. It was about 200 people. And they said, we want you to talk about negative engagement because these people don't believe in positive engagement. They don't believe it does anything. So if you can tell them scary stories about how the world's ending, they might respond. And so in the spirit of doing something terrible, I walked into the room. I think this is the next slide. Yes. I walked into the room, and I said, do any of you know why I was hired to speak to all of you today? Nobody said anything. And I said, it's because I'm the smartest person here. I'm smarter than all of you, and I'm here to educate you on things that you don't know about. Management thinks you guys are really not smart, but I'm the smartest guy here, so I'm here to educate you. And then I put up this slide. Thank goodness somebody got angry enough to raise their hand and say, if you're so smart, how come you misspelled person, and that's not the right use of here? And I looked back. This is where it's really bad, and I'd use some foul language typically in my speech. I'm not going to because it's on the record. I looked back, and I said, I don't know what you're talking about. And everybody looked at the slide again. And all the misspellings were corrected. Yeah, this is evil, right? And this guy said, now you're trying to trick us. And somebody else chimed in. And I said, guys, hold on. Only my mother thinks I'm brilliant. I have 3 kids now. She's kind of questioning it. Don't worry. This was just an exercise. In the last year, can you think of a time where you were more engaged than the last 30 seconds? And then everybody like, that's right, Dave's never engaged like this. People say things, I don't want to get political, but people say things like love trumps hate. I don't think that's true. I think there's a lot more people in the world that love than people that hate, but hate is much more powerful than love. You think about the number of people it takes to destroy a culture in a company, very small, right? So you need to think about this stuff. But I said to them, how many of you talk to your employees like this? You don't say you're the smartest person here. You say, don't worry about it. That's something we're handling. You go back to picking. You unpack the trucks. We got this covered. They don't say they're the smartest person here, but they treat their employees like management's really smart, and they're not smart at all. And then it got very quiet. So I just want you to think about this. Ask yourself, are we a company that treats our hourly employees this way? We may not tell them we're smarter than you, but do we act that way? Because it doesn't work. So, we go back to this analytics story, and the reason why analytics matter, one of the many reasons why they matter, is because there's a debate going on between the CFO and the CHRO. And I have a slide later that says the CHRO has always had a seat at the table, but they just haven't had a lot to talk about, right? These financial stories have not been there. And the CFO says things like, do values really equal value for the company? We have strong values, that's great. How does that translate into money for my office? So is there a little fissure or a giant chasm between finance and HR? And I think it's a giant chasm in almost every organization. The only thing that they can agree on is compliance and reporting. Everything else is different, almost opposing, right? So we need to think about this a little bit differently. When you talk to CFOs, again, measurements, analytics, when you talk about measurements for them, measuring employee engagement is not a priority. 63% say this. Employee engagement metrics lack financial credibility. How many people feel this is true? Show of hands. Anybody? How many people here have a great measure for employee engagement? Some? Maybe I got one of these and like a half hand raise. So, I mean, there's some out there, but it's really hard, right? It's not a simple process. So, think about this. Analytics, measuring performance, things like that. How is this possible? Financial capital is abundant, right? It's very easy to borrow money these days. There's lots of cash out there, okay? But it's very carefully managed, right? Human capital is scarce, but not carefully managed at all. That's the opposite of supply and demand, right? But that's what we're doing in many, many cases today. And it's partly due to a lack of visibility. We can't see certain things, right? We don't have access to information in a useful format. So let's talk about negative engagement a little bit. I said that a small number of people can poison the entire pool for a company's culture. We survey employees. We've actually surveyed over 600,000 employees now, and we asked one of the questions on there. It says, compared to other companies, are you an excellent place to work, better than most, about the same, somewhat worse, or worst company in the area? Okay? How many people do you think say worst company in the area? Anyone? 10%. Anyone else? 5%. It's actually 2.5%. It's very, very small. You think, if it's the worst company in the area and there's lots of jobs, why don't you go somewhere else, right? This is a very, very negative population, okay? If they don't like it here but they're unwilling to leave, they will destroy the culture, okay? And so we think about this all the time, and generally people are very positive about their companies. It swings much more to the left-hand side of the equation. But you've got to know this stuff and understand where are the folks that are destroying the culture in the company. You've got to have visibility into this stuff. It used to be you have a couple of people. You're going to love my third grade graphics here. You have a couple of people in an organization. They can cause a lot of problems, but they can't destroy the entire culture. But today with social media, they get to talk to everybody, you know? And they don't just get to talk to people inside the company, it turns out. They get to talk to everybody. So I enjoy pulling things off of Glassdoor.com and Indeed.com. Do you guys read Indeed.com ever? Do you go in there and look at your reviews? Sort of a one-way ticket to hell for all of you, right? Yeah, it's pretty awful. So when I found this one, I found it particularly interesting. I worked at blank full-time for less than a year. So I go on Indeed.com. I found the review. The person says, the pros, we get benefits, catered lunches, and it's a nice building. Cons, I would have gladly traded every free lunch, every free snack, and every day of unlimited PTO for a genial, approachable team leader as opposed to the non-genial, wholly unsupportive, unapproachable, abrasive, snarky boss I had. This is my favorite part. This person is a beautiful writer, right? This jerk could have written, produced, directed, and starred in Horrible Bosses 1 and 2 and any other sequels. I understand she's no longer with the company. Good, I'm sure the office is more pleasant now. Too bad she didn't leave before I got there. So you know what company this was? It was Indeed.com. Which I found particularly delicious because they've been destroying us. So, you know, visibility is everything, okay? Access to information in a useful format, right? The Google model, that is everything. That is analytics, though, okay? Providing that access. This is somebody that was able to provide access to information in a useful format to all of us, so we know there was a problem at Indeed.com, but now she's gone. So what if you don't care about your employees at all? What are some negative engagement examples of companies that don't care at all? Man skipped work for 6 years and no one noticed until he won an award. Have you guys heard this story? This just surfaced recently. It's amazing. General manager of a water treatment facility. The employees thought he died. But because he was so unfriendly, one day he didn't come to work anymore and they said he probably died. We don't know anybody in his family, just shh. And because he never really did much, the place ran smoothly without him for 6 years. It turns out the award he was getting was the 20 Years of Outstanding Service Award. And when they came to find him, his cube was empty. And they asked around, and the employee said, yeah, we think he died. And they said, no, we've been paying him this whole time. So he was getting $42,000 a year. This was not in the United States, by the way, it was in Spain. He was getting $42,000 a year. And the Spanish are incredibly generous people. When they figure this out, they fined him $31,000. So $200,000 in pay, $31,000 fine, we're all moving to Spain. But the point is, these are the kinds of things, right? This is what CFOs listen to. They don't say, hey, we've got this great program, we're going to get everybody engaged and it's going to be fantastic. They don't listen to that. What they listen to is, you know what? We could have a major disaster. And they say, disaster? What are you talking about? And that's when they pay attention. Somebody who really understands this engagement thing is Herb Kelleher. Now, Southwest Airlines has been in the news recently. What was interesting is this lady, obviously, there was an accident on the plane. She passed away. It's a terrible story. But the way that because Southwest is such a darling of the media, because they really care about their employees, they're like, by the way, the Container Store is the people that originally brought me here. And the Container Store is the same way. That's a company that actually cares about its employees. And they put it into everything they do. Everything they do. So same with Southwest Airlines. And the media story became about the pilot hero instead of the death of somebody else. But that's a separate discussion. They have purpose, and they have a mission, employee experience, and they have the customer experience. But Herb Kelleher says, listen, if you take care of your employees, they will take care of your customers, right? He doesn't say, hey, the customer's always right. He says we take care of our employees and then they take care of the customers. And it's a different way of thinking. And that makes employee engagement a financial strategy. Does anybody know who this is? He drank 2 beers. They were Blue Moons, by the way, in the bottle. Stephen Slater. You want to talk about HR analytics and how important that is, okay? Visibility, getting access to information in a useful format. This guy, initially, I mean, they said, listen, the world discovers a new hero. I think that was the USA Today headline about this guy. This guy was a hero. What happened is he was bumped by a passenger on a plane. She wanted to put her bag in the overhead bin. He said, no, it's full. You can't fit it in there. A little bit of a tussle, and the bag hit him on the head. He had had a lot of tough things going on in his life, which I'll share in a second, and he had had enough. He grabbed 2 Blue Moon Belgian Whites, he pulled the emergency door, slid off the plane, got in his car, and drove home, where the police met him, and they drove him to his new home. But the point is, he was the working man's hero, right? This was the big story. And people came up with all kinds of interesting things. T-shirts, I slide for Slater was a big one. Let Slater slide. Instead of talking about the stuff that this guy did, they said this guy is a hero, right? But there was an impact on the business, right? And this isn't about analytics. The next piece is about analytics. The first piece is $25,000 to repack, fix a slide. 102 people never made it to their destination that day. Other flights were delayed and the airplane was taken out of service while the repairs took place. But you know what? We had real analytics on Stephen Slater in HR. We knew what was going on with this guy. He had a history of drug and alcohol abuse, okay? Recently cared for his father who had passed away, okay? He was caring for his dying mother, and then he was challenged by a passenger. The analytics in the HR department that they had were never applied, and this guy was the most customer-facing asset. He was a flight attendant for JetBlue. So all this great stuff happened, but in the end, this was something that could have been avoided. The great stuff about his celebrity, there was cost. There were over 100 people that had to change their vacation plans and their business plans. A lot of negative things happened. Does that make sense? Okay. So Southwest steals JetBlue's crown. 2017, they beat him in the J.D. Power rankings. Okay? Again, they've been working on it forever. They did it, and they did it by putting the employees first, not the customers first. United, let's talk about airlines for a little bit. I'm a United million-mile flyer. I did 140 flights with United last year. I had a full head of hair last year. No, I'm just kidding. But I was really on 140 flights. And United thought it would be a great idea to have a lottery. Now, they never implemented this. I'm sure you guys all read about this. But they said some people, for the annual bonus used to be like between $2,000 and $4,000 per employee, which is a lot of money when you're a flight attendant. Okay? They said instead of the $2,000 to $4,000, we'll spin the wheel. You might win a Mercedes. You might win nothing. And they thought, after all the hard work that their employees put in, that this was a great way to engage them. They're going to be so engaged, was what this guy said, former American guy. I guess it didn't work out at American, so we brought him over. And somebody could win up to $1 million, I think. But again, the majority of the folks would get nothing. This is not respecting the employee, okay? Again, analytics is the opposite of that. So few companies believe that engagement matters. Some do, but few. The reason why I think that everybody in this room needs to think about employee engagement in a different way and why we need to give employees access to information in a useful format is based on this one set of facts, okay? And this is, nobody talks about this, but I think it's really interesting. We call this the flip side. Slide, not the flip side, jeez. In 1975, 83% of your company's value is based on tangible assets, okay? This is for S&P 500 companies, okay? Over time, we go to today, 84% of your company is based on intangible assets. Things like how do you drive service, intellectual property, different value statements that don't have to do with stuff, people. You don't find people in a gap statement, right? You don't find that kind of stuff in general accounting, right? But that's how companies are valued today. It's not based on tangible assets. This world has changed, and because of that, we need to leverage people even more than we ever have before, because they are the driving value proposition for your company. So because companies don't understand how to invest in human capital, they do it very poorly, okay? By the way, if you Google flushing money down the toilet, there's an incredible array of clip art you can get. I was incredibly cautious in my choice, but it appears people are interested in that phrase. So, you know, again, in God we trust, everyone else bring data. That's what the CFO says. Opinions, we don't really care about opinions that much. They're nice, but we need facts, okay? And without the right analytic strategy, you don't have the facts. And that's the problem for the CHRO, right? Is finance has a lot of facts and figures and numbers. CHRO doesn't, and I told you guys this earlier. HR has a seat at the table, but they often don't have enough to say. They've got a lot of ideas, a lot of engagement stories, but they can't speak about it in financial terms. And the folks that gave the talk before me in here, I popped in for 5 minutes, one thing I heard them say was they were able to talk about things in financial terms, and that made the difference. That's the story. We have to put things in those terms. So, Jack Welch, the head of HR at every company should be at least as important as the CFO. I believe that's true, right? How does this tie back to analytics, right? The numbers matter, but the numbers that are going to drive your business have to do with people. That's a CHRO, okay? So, tale of two companies. I want to give you some information. This is factual stuff. This is from the last year of my work, and I have two companies. And I want to share with you some analytics. These are really more data points, okay, on these two companies. First, fully loaded cost of straight time. Company A, $43.22. This is for an hourly employee in, I believe, a distribution operation, a massive privately owned company that pays very, very well. Okay, that's fully loaded. Benefits, vacations, holidays, everything is built into that number. But the wage rate there is like 26 bucks an hour, okay? It's a lot for a lift truck driver, okay? Company B, and by the way, these companies are within, this makes it really interesting, they're within 100 miles of each other in the Midwest, okay? Company B pays about $13.50 an hour, and some benefits on top, it ends up being $17.29, okay? So let's talk about, is it really about the money? There are different currencies, and again, my story today is I'm trying to sell you, and I don't sell analytics, by the way, so I'm an objective member of the team here. I do sit on the Workforce Institute board at Kronos, but I don't sell analytics, okay? And so I'm telling you what I see to be true based on all the customers that we work with. There are other currencies we need to pay them with. We need to pay them with analytics. So compared to other companies, pay and benefits are good. We surveyed both employee groups. It was anonymous. They could tell us absolutely the truth without any repercussions. 87% of the employees in Company A said the benefits are good. 77%, almost 78% in Company B. The management team really cares about the employees. 19% said they do at the well-paid company. Less than 19% of the people said they care about us. 98% at Company B. but we pay them so well. How could they not care about us? How could we not care about them? Of course we care about them. I feel like I'm part of the company, 57% versus 91%. And by the way, everybody always takes pictures. If you want the deck, give me your card. I'll email you the deck today. You can take pictures too. I'll get into the picture, whatever you want. It's good. But I'm happy to send anybody the deck. And Randon has, unfortunately, my email address and will haunt me over this. The management team focuses more on office workers than shift workers. 71%. 71%. You want this number to be low. 71% at the high-paying company said, yeah, they care about the white-collar folks. They don't care about us, right? And then the management team communicates well with the employees, 31% versus 69%, okay? How could that be? Because we pay them so well, right? And on the flip side, for companies that don't pay very well, they say, what can we do? We don't have big margins. What can we do to hire and retain great employees? We don't have those kinds of resources. Well, the answer is, it's about different currencies, but the turnover at company A was 3 times higher than company B. 3 times higher, within 100 miles of each other, about the same demographic. So, did you know there's more than one currency? And I want to focus on this just for a second. So you've got things like cash and fringe benefits and time off. We talk about that stuff all the time, right? How much do you pay them, right? How about, and I'm not giving you like the hippie story here, okay? I'm giving you what we believe to be true. This isn't like, if we all join hands, we're going to sing some songs, no one's leaving, right? That's not what I'm saying. The chance to make a positive impact. Employees more and more care about the fact that they're actually doing something that matters, right? You can pay me $13.50 an hour, but you give me a chance to win every day, that's fantastic. That's analytics, okay? And, do you invest in training, right? Analytics is part of that story, but we want to upskill employees, and we want to tell them and show them that we care about them, okay? Analytics. Visibility, that's all analytics all day long. Access to information in a useful format. Visibility, do you give your employees visibility into what's going on? Are they in the dark, right? This is how we pay them, and they can stay, and they will stay, right, regardless of the financial piece, okay? Yes, money matters, but these matter too. Structured mentoring is not an analytics story, so I didn't put it in red, but structured mentoring matters as well. And people say, well, we care about our employees, and I talk to Tom, once a week. I'm talking about structured mentoring, where you actually put structure in place. Flexibility, public recognition for performance. How can you recognize employees if you don't know how well they've done, right? We have to have access to this information. Leadership-enabled success, we're going to give them the tools to win. Merit-based promotions, again, how do we know what merit is, right? Have we measured that? And there's a lot of other ones, but those are ones that I think are really important. So, couple more slides. You don't have to change. Survival is optional, okay? The world is changing very, very quickly. Wall Street Journal just had an article where towns are paying $5,000 for you to move there. Why? Because they can't hire employees. Now there's bugs in here. I showered this morning, I promise. So this is becoming a desperate situation in our country. Very desperate situation. It is very hard to hire and retain employees. It is only going to get worse for us, okay? So what is going to be your differentiator? What is the thing that you're going to do to hire and retain great employees? So I want you to, I'm going to give you homework, but I have no authority to assign it, so I recommend you do none of this. But seriously, I want you to think about these things. Do you provide access to information in a useful format? Do you do this in your company? Is this something you're actively working on so that employees feel and know that they're valued? And 2, what value do you place on your workforce? I think you need to have an honest conversation with no one in the room here, privately, about how much do we value our workforce? And do those 2 things align? Do 1 and 2 align? If we believe in our employees, are we doing something about it? Okay? So, thank you for coming. I appreciate it. I'm giving you a little bit of time back, but I want to make sure that if you have questions, you ask them. So thank you very much. Any questions? Yes, sir. Do you want to use the mic, or I'll just repeat? I can just repeat what you say.
Can you go back to the last slide? So number 1 on there, do you provide access to useful information in useful format? How do you define what information needs to be provided?
Yeah, you know, consultants love to say things like it depends, because then we don't have to answer the question. But let's say in a warehouse distribution environment. Yes, we want the employees to understand how well they're doing specifically, productivity and performance, right? So things like pick rates, but also things like accuracy, right? But we also want them to know how they stand inside of the entire organization. So how well am I doing compared to my peers is helpful. And then a little bit more global, we want to share some information on how that facility is actually doing. Are we winning or are we losing? And when we do that, we get them engaged in trying to solve problems that are maybe outside of their area, which can be helpful. So we don't need to give them 50 different data points, but we want to give them more data points than is traditional. Let's get them engaged in a little bit more ownership over the entire enterprise. We say, yeah, but that's distracting because they're just supposed to be out picking. Well, they're not going to be here very long if that's all they're supposed to do, right? So let's give them maybe 3 to 5 KPIs, 2 to 3 that just are all about them, and 2 that are about the organization as a whole. And that should get them engaged in continuous improvement projects.
So do you work back and forth with the employees then to determine what information that they want to see?
Yeah, see, we have a lot of clients that think they're doing a great job communicating, and we talk to the employees and they say, we don't care about almost all of this. You know, and so that's the issue, is we need to understand what's relevant to them. Yes, we need to drive productivity and performance, but what do they want to see? Yeah, thank you. Any other questions? Was this a good use of time? Okay, it was mostly relevant to the topic, but not 100%, so go easy on me. So thank you very much for coming, and if you have questions afterwards, please come up and see me as well. Thank you.